And so now it's my very distinct pleasure to introduce Tera Johnson of Food Finance Institute at the University of Wisconsin. Tera was successful in creating a national brand, Tera's Way. Probably some people here are actually customers of Tera's Way. I know Ed is going to go get a can, so Tera can sign it, autograph it tomorrow morning. In the process of doing that, she's gained a tremendous amount of expertise, going from starting to a national brand. And I had an opportunity to meet with Tera, Barbara, and I think Matthew Lindbergh went to a boot camp that Tera did for food hubs up in Marshalltown. And since our food hub wasn't actually operating as a food hub, we stayed only the first day. But I was so impressed with Tera, so impressed with the depth of her knowledge and her humanity and humility and ability to really connect with people. I was just really sorry that I didn't have a business that was operating in that space so we could actually stick around. But what came from that was a wonderful relationship that we've started, and now Tera's here. And we will also be talking about a food business boot camp that Josh Larrabee and FIDA are going to be sponsoring, and Tera is going to be teaching, and that's going to be in April and May. We'll have more on that as we go along. But without any further ado, I want you to put your hands together for Tera Johnson.
So I founded a company called Tera's Way. Most people know me from that. So how many of you use the product or know the product, right? Okay, cool. How many of you know what Way is? Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm going to tell you the story of Tera's Way, and I tell that story because it is really illustrative of a lot of things that food entrepreneurs go through. It's also illustrative of the impact that one's business can have on a local economy. It's illustrative of what a community can do to attract and help a business like mine grow. So there's a big part of this that is economic development related. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the clients that I've worked with and things that I'm doing at the Food Finance Institute, because I think that is really relevant to your community. I have to say that the energy in this community is phenomenal. People have told me this, before I came here. They said, "Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of energy there," and I'm like, "Okay." I don't know quite what you mean by that, but now I get it. Yeah, and I will also say that one of my greatest mentors and inspirations for my starting Tera's Way is a man named Paul Willis. Do you know Paul? Some people do. Yeah, so Paul is one of the founders of Nyman Ranch Meats. Okay, so I was driving here this morning in the fog, and I'm like, I'm in Iowa, I gotta call Paul. And because Paul and I met when the former Soviet Union was falling apart. He and I were sent by USAID on a project to Kazakhstan, and he was the pig guy, and I was the businesswoman, right? And we were they put us in this hotel that was like up in the mountains, and it used to be like an Olympic training facility, except that there was nobody there. So it was Paul and I in this hotel with hundreds of rooms and just Paul and I. We don't speak Russian, right? We can't read the menu. So we're like, trying to order for food and stuff. And this woman comes out wearing this slinky red full-length dress with a violin and started serenading us. It was the craziest thing. And in that dinner, he said, Tera, I brought some of my pork chops to a guy named Bill Nyman in California. And he said, those were the best pork chops I've ever had, right? So this was the beginning of Nyman Ranch. So I don't know if you know this, but Paul told me on the way up here that he testified before your state ag committee yesterday. And they went back and figured out how much money Nyman Ranch has paid in Iowa to Iowa small family farms since it started. Guess how much it is? Have any guess?
12 million.
Double that. 500 million. And that's without a multiplier. So the thing about this kind of agriculture, this was true for Tera's Way too, that it's very local, right? When you pay a local farmer, they don't travel and spend their money in Texas, they spend it locally, right? So if you start taking that into account, the economic impact of that. And he was the first person who came up with the idea that maybe consumers cared about animal welfare, right? And this was a part of how that product was marketed and still is. That before he came up with that idea, nobody understood that consumers even cared about that, right? And now they do. Now it's a mainstream thing. Paul is a genius, and he's from Iowa. Of course, right. I'm not from Iowa. So maybe I'm a genius, maybe not. But I tell you that story because I'm going to tell you my story. But look what impact one person can have, right? And he did it here, right? And it's also a great example of thinking big, which I'm going to talk about some more. So Paul inspired me. He did. And so I was running a cheese company. So I was the CEO of a 100-year-old cheese company in Wisconsin. And we made 100% of those hockey puck Goudas, you know, those little red things, right? And back in the day, that was specialty cheese, right? I dye my hair so I don't know how gray I am, but I'm old enough to live when this was specialty cheese. So we made those. We took all of our whey and we took whey from other plants and we made animal feed out of it. That's kind of the thing that we used to do in the United States with whey. So that company was owned by a group of people in the community. The story of that was it was started by one family. They grew it. They sold it to Nestle's. Nestle's was doing a crappy job running it. And the community bought it back. So it was like 35 members of the community bought the company back. They ran it for a while, and then members of the community were getting older and they needed their money out for retirement. So they were looking for a transition. And what happened was they brought me in to help facilitate a transition to sell the company back to the founding family, which we did. Now, I, at that time, said, I'm too young to retire. I'm going to have to do something else. And so we had along the way started making organic cheese, and there was no place to add value to the whey. So we'd pay a lot of money for organic milk, we'd bring it in, and then we would make organic cheese, and the whey would just get commingled with the commodity whey. And that was happening at every organic cheese plant in the state. It turns out there was no plant in the world that was capable of segregating whey, organic whey. So consumers wanted it, but there was no place to manufacture it. So I knew this coming out of white clover, and I said, okay, I'm going to be the nut who is going to raise the money and do this. So I say that because I had to raise $14 million and I had no sales. Zero. I had no sales. I had no plant. Look at your head. Look at your head. It's like that never happens, right? It doesn't. And part of the reason I was able to do that was I ran a company that we process whey. So people believed that, I knew what I was doing. Part of the reason, though, is that I really did my work. To raise the money. And by that I meant I was really well prepared to raise money, and I knew how to do it because I had been running a company before, right? And I'd participated in a sale of a company. So there were some reasons why that worked. So anyway, but it took 2 years. So it took 2 years to get the plant, to get the business documented financially, get all of the legal work done because I had to raise money. People say, well, where did you get $14 million? And I say, everywhere. If you got to raise that much money, man, you are talking to everybody. So I did this with a combination of debt and equity. There was power company money in it. There was SBA bonds. There was SBA guarantees of local bank money. There was investors. There were convertible notes. I'm still, like I'm CDFIs. I mean, we're talking everybody's money. But that is what it takes now to get deals financed, right? The days of just going and talking to one person, your banker, it doesn't happen that way so much anymore. So I got that all together, and we had the great closing at in the middle of 2008. And now think about what happened. There are a few people in here who are laughing. Been there, done that? Yeah. So then there's some of you who probably don't remember 2008. So in 2008, the economy fell apart, right? We were chugging along down this way, and then it went like this. I mean, it collapsed. So I had letters of intent to purchase, and I had letters of intent to supply the plant. None of the people who signed the letters of intent actually bought anything. Half of the people who said they would supply didn't, right? So what the hell do you do, right? It's like you're on a motorcycle. You went off one side of the Grand Canyon and you're soaring, right? And you're like, okay, I'm either gonna go splat or I'm gonna make it, right? Yeah. So what did I do? Well, I knew that there was a market for infant formula whey protein is used in infant formula. It's preferred for infant formula, and there was no supply of it before my plant came on. And so we said, okay, we know that we can sell to infant formula companies, but we got to get our plant certified, QA certified, to ship to an infant formula company. Can you imagine a more difficult thing to do? Like seriously, infant formula, think about it, right? So this was me and my plant manager and a consultant, and basically locked in a room for about 2 months. We documented the whole program, we implemented the whole program, we got third-party audited, and we started shipping to an infant formula company. That's the kind of thing that in a bigger company would take a year easily, and it would be a whole team of people. It's one of the things that you do when you're like, failure is like right here, man. Losing the house, I personally guaranteed $14 million. It's crazy. Like, I don't know, that wasn't my net worth. I can promise you that. Okay, so we started doing that, and then we started the brand. So we always intended to have a brand, but we thought we were going to have a bulk business first. Thing about plants, by the way, is you fill them up. That's how you make money. So we're going to fill it up, and then we're going to do our brand. Well, that wasn't working so well because of what was going on with the economy. So we said, well, we'll launch the brand. So there was this wonderful day when the Secretary of Agriculture was at my plant for the grand opening, which you never have, by the way, right when you open. Right? You want the dignitaries there like 6 months later, right? When everything is running. So it's 6 months later, the Secretary of Agriculture comes, and I've learned that morning that Whole Foods took the brand right out of the gate nationally. It was like, yep, we want it, and we want it everywhere. And when can you get it there?
What's that?
Right. And I was like, so the Secretary of Agriculture, this is cool, I'm celebrating everything. And then the next day I realized, oh my God, there's no way I have enough money in this business to support a national rollout. And so I had to raise more money. So here we are in the end of 2009. The economy's still awful, and I had to raise another $1 million. And that was equity, man. That was not going to be something else. So I did that. And what other things that happened with this? So that plant that I built is the only batch processing whey facility in the world. So that means it can keep things, different kinds of whey, separate. So it does organic, It does grass-fed now, and it does goat. Keeps them separate. So that was unique. The other thing that was unique was we built a green manufacturing facility, which is a Fairfield thing, right? It's a thing like this. So what did that look like? That was a puzzle, right? Because hardcore manufacturing, you have to make money, right? This can't cost more than a conventional factory would. And I did this though because my customer cares about it, right? Organic Way, they care. And then we did it in a way that was really smart. So we followed the LEED certification standard. That was really useful because it got 1 million engineers. So my plant had 14 miles of stainless steel pipes in it. Wow. Yeah, crazy, giant. You know, it's crazy. And this is the smallest plant I could possibly build and make money, right? It's still very big. So that got all these engineers on the same page to follow that. And it was like unleash creativity. Like these folks have never been asked to think about this stuff before, and they loved it. So we did things like recover the heat from the boiler to preheat the chamber of a dryer. So raw whey is 95% water, so you're drying it in a dryer. That's 65 feet tall, so that's a huge physical structure, right? A lot of space, air to be heating, and so we preheated the chamber of the dryer with recovered heat. We did a ton of heat exchange, way more than would be typical. We had reflective surfaces on the roof. We had windows. Like whey plants never have windows. They're like these ugly caves, awful for people to work in, right? They're awful. We had windows, and that helped with the energy use too. And then we also recovered all the water on the site, and that is very unusual, right? And we could do that because we were building from scratch. It's easy to do it, you know, if you're thinking about it. And what was interesting about that was the city, soon after we opened, they imposed a discharge fee on all of the factories in the town, which by the way is a town called Reedsburg. And people would gripe about it, and they'd send them to my plant because we had no discharge. We were not paying any fees, and it was all because of how we handled the water on the site. And we have a lot of water on a whey plant site. So that was a big deal. The other thing I should say for your benefit is that why did I pick Reedsburg? So I thought I was going to go to a place called Dodgeville. There was an old cheese plant in Dodgeville. I was going to go into the old cheese plant. I had it all engineered to go in the old cheese plant. And then we started a phase 1 environmental, and we found something. We found a buried railroad car. Not an underground storage tank, a railroad car that they had used to store fluid in. So, yeah, just think about that. And of course it leaked, right? So can't go there now, and this thing is up on a hill, there are houses down. I mean, it was like, oh God, all right, not going there. So I put the word out to like a 6-county region, because whey is 95% water and you don't want to truck it very far, so it couldn't be just anywhere. And so it was like 6 counties and rural counties. And you would think that a lot of communities would respond, you know, because I'm putting the word out to the economic development people. 2 did. Now, part of it was a lot of wastewater. So that took out a lot of communities would not have the wastewater capacity for a plant like that. But I think more of that is that small communities don't think they are attractive to a business. They don't promote themselves. They're not organized. And I mean, Reesburg gave me a packet 2 days later that had, this is the BOG loads that you have as compared to what's available in the wastewater facility. And we got this TIF district. And I mean, they were totally organized about it. So when people ask me now when I speak around the country, actually, to small communities about how do I get a Tera's Way to my community, I say, get your act together. Seriously. And think big. I mean, small communities think nobody wants you, but we actually want to go there. So anyway, there's a whole lesson there. So we found ourselves 3 years after we started, right, that we've coming out of the recession. I had brought in investor money, right? When you bring in money from investors, they want their money out at some point. They're not in this forever. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay, right? It's so funny because in the Midwest, people say, and so we ended up selling the company, okay, to a public company and we were operating for 3.5 years. It's an astonishing thing. It's an astonishing thing. The plant was sold out for a year when we sold, coming out of the recession. Yeah, right.
What company bought?
A company called Omega Protein bought us. So they do fish oil. They have fishing boats and yeah. So we sold the company and then people would say, because I'm from the Midwest too, right? So people would say, oh, are you okay? You know, and I'm like, well, actually, I'm kind of okay. Yeah, I knew it. That was part of the game, right? But they came in and they doubled the size of the plant. They hired more people. These are advanced manufacturing jobs with benefits in a small community. Hell yes, it's a good thing. And then the other thing is that Tera's Way has gone on to become the #1 brand of whey protein in the natural category, right? Which is a very big deal. There are over 200 brands. Yeah. It's a super big deal. And it's #4 in any category. So what is so crazy about that is when I did Tera's Way, I thought, you know, I wanted to be #1 in the natural category. Big, hairy, audacious goal, right? I'm a big believer in those, right? I never thought it would be where it is now. So one of my first mainstream retailers was Hy-Vee. Like, I couldn't believe I was going into a Hy-Vee. It was crazy. Now we're in Kroger and Target, and I mean, it's crazy to me. But it's a reflection of what is going on in the food world. It is a reflection of the opportunity for everybody, I think. That now that mainstream food is wanting, the consumer wants cleaner food, right? When I launched Tera's Way, and in Madison, I would demo, right? And people would say, in Madison, they'd say, well, what's the amino acid profile of your whey? And what's the temperature you're drying at? And all this stuff, right? And I would go to even just Milwaukee, and people would be like, what's whey? You know, I was like back on Little Miss Muffet, you know? Seriously, it was, but now that's changed, right? That whey protein is a much more commonly consumed thing than it used to be, right? And so that's a reflection of consumers caring, and consumers are pulling the food industry big time right now. I was on at an event with Lou Gentine, who's now I think he's the 3rd generation owner of Sargento cheese. Little brand, right? It's probably a $500 million brand, kind of the same size as Nyman these days, something like that in the cheese world, pretty big. Anyway, he said it cost them $10 million to launch one SKU. SKU, for those of you who don't know, right? It's one barcode, right? Okay, $10 million. And that's because if you're Sargento, you can't just like say to your customers, I'm going to give you my new product, but not you, right? Or I'm going to do it in this part of the country and not that part of the country. You don't get to do that when you're Sargento, right? So 10 million bucks every time they try something new. Right, so how many times do you think they're going to do that? Not very many. And that, there's a different version of that story for big food everywhere. It isn't that they're moronic, although it looks like it, when they do like, oh yeah, new innovative new thing is another kind of double stuffed Oreo, you're kind of like, really?
Another goldfish.
Another goldfish cracker. It's now purple, right? A purple fish, that's new, right? The problem, honestly, is that it costs so much for them to do it, right? So that has opened up incredible opportunities, and Tera's Way was kind of at the beginning of that, right? That suddenly there is a market for food companies, right? For small food companies, because the bigger food companies are looking at them saying, they can do the innovation for us. And it's way cheaper for us to buy them than it is for us to do the $10 million launch everywhere and discover that it isn't going to work. Okay. So I think one of the things about Tera's Way that was it hard for me to sell my company? Absolutely. I mean, it was my baby, right? But I also had 3 children. And I've fledged my children too, right? So it's like fledging your company, right? It went off and it got a lot more capital and it could grow a lot. And what is also impactful for me is that they've put a lot of money into the brand. I'm now more famous than ever, right? And I don't do anything for it. It's kind of crazy. An annuity, right? But what is cool is I talk to people who use Tera's Way, and it's used curatively a lot, right? So doctors recommend it to people who have cancer and they can't eat anymore because they're in chemotherapy, and I can be on an airplane talking to people next to me who don't even know me, and they'll go, oh my God, that's what my mother has been having when she was, recovering, and she swears that she wouldn't be alive without it. And, it's crazy to have people say that kind of stuff. So this it's not just about starting a company and selling it, right? It's about what this means for consumers, right? What it means for people. That's a big part of this. It's a big part of this. So this week I went to my integrative doc. He's very into health and nutrition and using food curatively and all of that. Which is, by the way, when I started Tera's Way in the United States, that was like a fringy thing. It's much more mainstream now, right? And he was testing my lipid profile, and said, well, you must be, doing fish oil, and I said, no, I don't do fish oil. And he said, well, where are you getting all this omega-3s? And I'm like, well, so I only buy grass-fed dairy products. Okay, so like your Francis Ticky from around here, man, he's like the gold star of that, right? So absolutely gold star. So I only do that. I do grass-fed meat. I do, flaxseed oil, a bunch of stuff. And it looks, my biochemically, my body looks like I'm supplementing, and I'm not. So I'm walking out, and he said, we got to fix farming, don't we? This was a doctor saying that to me, right? So isn't that interesting? So fixing farming, the other way we got to fix farming. I was in Colorado last week training people, and there's a woman who is now training consultants, right, about ag and food. And there's a woman there who's really smart, who said she was putting a land co-op together, which is kind of an interesting thing. We're going to aggregate some investor money and have a co-op. And then because land in Colorado, Add whatever you're paying for land around here, like triple it, and then add the same amount again for water rights, okay? Because you have to buy water rights out there. And it hasn't rained, right? So she said, you know, in this land co-op thing, we're looking at having to write conservation easements that contemplate allowing structures on them, because in the future, which may be 5 years from now, we have to grow everything indoors because climate is being so impactful to their agriculture out there, both in terms of water and heat and wind and all kinds of things, right? So this is what the conservation people are thinking about in Colorado. Never mind you know? So fixing agriculture. We have a responsibility, I think, in the Midwest. Like I've seen data about this, that the upper Midwest and the Baltics are where we're going to grow food in the future. It's us. So we have an incredible, so all of this can be like really depressing, or you can be like me, and who's an entrepreneur, and say, what a friggin' opportunity, right? Right? We have an opportunity to create a different kind of agriculture, a different kind of products for consumer. There's a market for for innovative products. There's a market for companies if you want to sell them. I mean, in a lot of ways, it has never been better for this kind of entrepreneurial food and agriculture. That's the great news about what is happening right now. And I see it all over the country. So you guys here have some assets that are pretty impressive to me, which is mostly your culture in this town and a bunch of entrepreneurial people and a vision for the future, right? And you have people coming here from all over the world, which gives you this gift of a diversity to how you're thinking about things, right? That's a super gift. So I hope you can take from this that you can dream big. Like I raised $14 million. You're not supposed to be able to do that. I did it. And I'm a woman, by the way, it makes it harder to raise money. And I did it, right? So this is all about, and I think it's, in a way, dreaming big makes it easier to raise the money because people want to see things happen. They want to see you be successful. And my work now at the Food Finance Institute, I see people successful all the time. My joke is that people come to me after they've been losing money for 3 years and they're tired of it. Then they come to us and we help them fix their business model and raise the money they need to grow and connect them. And usually you need to be bigger than you ever thought you did. That's a typical thing. You need more money than you ever dreamed you needed. But all those things are possible with a good plan, a good, powerful vision, and all that entrepreneurial energy that you all seem to have here in Fairfield. So I'm going to open it up for you to ask questions now, because I suspect that you have questions. Do you want to start? Somebody?
Actually, I've got an idea.
You've got an idea. Uh-oh, Bob's got an idea.
I'm going to grab them. Eddie, do you have to go now?
We do, yeah.
Okay, because I was going to bring you up here for a moment, Ed. Why don't I...
You don't get to go.
Yeah, you don't get to go. Just. I'd love to have just a few minutes. I was going to sit you and Josh and Tera on 3 seats, and we were going to have a little panel discussion. But if you need to go, why don't you come on up? And I'd just love to get your impression of Tera's impression of Fairfield and how you think that we can really take advantage of this.
Great.
3 words or less.
3 words or less.
Well, thanks, Bob, and welcome, Tera. I'm glad
thank
we got
you.
a chance to speak before the event started to learn your history. I was excited. I don't know that everybody in the audience knows, but I know a few people know that I'm connected to a company that was started and grown here in Fairfield that is in the natural food space, which is Heavenly Organics, that imports 3 different very pristine organic honeys from India. And then we also have a manufacturing plant that turns those into a 3-ingredient raw organic candy.
Cool.
about 20 miles north of here because we didn't have space in Fairfield. So it's an inside joke. Josh and I.
Ironically. Yeah,
So
that is ironically.
It is ironically because, we had been so successful that the real estate, had really been gobbled up. And it's really fascinating. You talk about thinking big, that, we've really exercised that because, entrepreneurs are people who can really visualize and see the trends and apply their creativity to that. We have great collaborators in Fairfield because there is an openness of spirit among the population and people really want each other's success. So when those people come together to work on a particular project, a particular vision, the success rate is exponential
Right.
because they're committed to each other.
Yep.
And also there's a sense of respect and belief in their success from the very beginning that's
Right.
going to guide that whole venture. And what we've learned over several decades of this is that I think the most important thing that we've learned about ourselves is that it's the culture. It's the entrepreneurial culture. It's the place where you feel safe everywhere to express an idea, to think it bigger, to take a risk. And that, I've said over the last 10 years that right now our community is in entrepreneurship 2.0, but I think we're actually getting to 3.0. We really do, have that. And there isn't really a lot of attention that is needed to that nurturing that took place in 1.0 and 2.0 because there's so much more self-sufficient, there's so much more confidence, and a younger generation is even more fearless than we were. So all of those elements are really remarkable, really astounding. I'll just mention to you that we were invited by our state economic development agency in 2003 to apply for a grant and an award that they had discovered or they had been contacted about. This was a nonprofit organization out of Washington, D.C. called the National Association of Towns and Townships. And they did advocacy work for small communities. And they were looking for the most entrepreneurial community in America under 10,000. Why?
Yeah.
Because of those communities you described in Wisconsin who didn't think that they
Right.
could sustain themselves beyond
Right.
their first generation of economics and business. And they wanted to promote more of that economic diversity throughout the country.
Right.
So we applied for that, and long story short, we won it hands down. So we were named the most entrepreneurial city in America under 10,000.
Cool.
Based on that. And again, it's only gotten better, it's only risen. This we've seen also some success in specific trend areas. In the 90s, we were the communications hub. In the 2000s, we became the finance hub. And in the last 5 or 6 years, what's remarkable are the food entrepreneurs that have come out of this community. And you're right, they are poised to really make a difference and also help redefine for America what their opportunities are in all of the rural areas of our states, and there are many.
Yeah.
So we're proud of it. We love it. We love our community. We embrace that culture, and we support each other. And we also know that we have a lot to share.
And I would say that in my travels around the country, I don't know another mayor who would have gotten up here and said that. So, yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, do you guys have questions? Ask me questions. Like, this is a great opportunity for you to have me here to think about stuff.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Tara.
Yeah.
So you said something tonight. Here, let's get everyone. Anyone wants to ask a question, I'll just hand the mic.
You get to be Vanna White.
Okay, very good. What you had mentioned is something that I'd never thought of, that the reason why the big food chains or food brands are not more innovative is it costs them $10 million to create an SKU, because which is your favorite child? Who are you going to who are you going to give the brand to or not? So the idea that absolutely opens up a huge opportunity for us in that small to medium-sized space. And so I just would love us to think about that, just exercise our own entrepreneurial imagination in terms of what that really means to us.
And so I want to add something now to that, which is to encourage you. Other parts of the country do not have agriculture right with them, right? They do food innovation, but they don't have the agriculture. So the thing that Tera's Way that made us so defensively unique was the fact that you could not get that raw whey anywhere else in the country, right? Because we had the cheese plants, right? So, and consumers want transparency back to where that food came from, right? And that's why Nyman works, that's why Tera's Way works, and you guys have that opportunity here. So not only just the $10 million thing, but also the fact that you have agriculture right here. Did you want to?
Basically, it's the same point. I'll just say it in my own words, which is it is sort of waking up to the connection that the big boys need the little guys. That's us,
how about that?
right?
Yeah, how about that? And I think, one of the things that I think in the local food systems world, people talk a lot about building capacity local at a small scale level, which is important, don't get me wrong. But I think there is this bigger context within which that is happening, which is that the bigger food companies are interested in need the smaller ones, right? And we as consumers need you guys to be innovating and creating these healthier products, because otherwise we're not going to get them. The big companies can't do it. Even if they wanted to, they can't.
So Josh, would you come on up.
I want to ask a question.
Come on.
Okay, come on up and ask a question.
Come up, and then we're going to talk about boot camp and what FIDA's position is on all of this.
So my question is, Fairfield is an incredible place with a lot of ideas, and a lot of folks are in discovery phase, I call it, or at a smaller scale than they like to be. What is the number one illusion that you see with folks that you work with who are on a smaller scale that they need to kind of clear the lens or overcome that hurdle?
That's a wonderful question. So remember the joke that everybody comes to me after they've been losing money for 3 years, right? So I think the biggest issue is that people don't realize how big their market needs to be in order for them to make money.
So their vision is not
Their vision is local, right? Which is beautiful.
local.
It's local, right? Local is beautiful. And we are true believers, so local is local, right? So how many people do you have in Fairfield?
10,000.
10,000, yeah. So, start doing the math, right? How many jars of salsa do 10,000 people buy, right? And they're not going to all quit buying Newman's Own, right? So you start doing some math about that, and it gets ugly. So one of the things that I do with people is help them design a business model that can work financially. So if they keep wanting to do salsa wholesale, they're probably going to have to sell to more places than Fairfield, right? That means going into distribution. It means raising money. It means a whole bunch of things. That's a path. Another path might be, so Bob was touring me around, and he brought me in a I don't know what you call it, a shop, art gallery, right? It was a combination of art gallery, place he was teaching art, and a place you're selling art supplies, right? Yeah. Right, so it's a combination of things. That is another way that you can make a local business work. So that sorting out the business model that's going to work is absolutely critical to making these food enterprises work. Yeah. 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 How about that? Questions? Yeah.
I'm having a little challenge with the concept of bigger is better. Because if I make quiche, my quiche is probably going to taste a little bit different than if it's produced by some big commodity. And so, I don't know, the idea that we need to sell our companies to these big conglomerates to make money doesn't feel good.
So did I actually say that? Did I ever say that?
Maybe you didn't, but I heard it.
No. So no, and I'm saying this. I'm putting you on the spot, and so this is what happens in the local food movement. That I speak like this, and people say, "Well, you're talking about big food conglomerates," and I'm not. I'm talking. Tera's Way is 20 people. Right? Even now that it's big, it's 40 people in a small local community, right? And my thing about this,
Nestle.
no, that was the cheese company. It was
that's
bought by
right.
Omega Protein, which
Okay,
makes fish oil. Okay?
all right.
So the thing about this, I never said that. Okay? No, but people in the local food movement go right there. Big is bad, selling your company is bad, 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 bad. And it's not bad, right? What about my story was bad? Nothing. We come with these preconceived notions about things, and that's why you heard what you heard, and that's not what I said. Okay? So, but what I would say, though, is making your own quiche is great. You can make wonderful quiche, but a lot of other people make wonderful quiche. And how are you going to be defensively unique? And how are you going to not lose money? I am all about you got to make money if you're going to make a difference. I'm looking at you because you have, you know this, right? You get to make money, you get to make positive difference when the business is working financially. So whether it's making quiche or making candy or whatever it is, you have to have a business model that can scale enough. Now, quiche, if you're not going to just wholesale quiche, you could have, especially in Fairfield, you have 40 restaurants or something. You could have a business here that is consumer facing. You get to make your own quiche. Nobody else is making a quiche. And you're making your money because you're selling direct to consumers and you have other products. You know what I mean? That's a business model that works. So my thing about this is you get to make a difference when you make money. Money isn't bad, it's what keeps you in the business. And working with people to get them to a business model that can work is magic. So in the world of entrepreneurship, right, people say that, I don't know, it's like 1 in 20 companies survive, something like that, through entrepreneurial things. 1 in 20, that seems high. Just saying, right? It just sounds high, 1 in 20. Okay, so the people that I've been working with since I did the Food Finance Institute, I bet I'm probably at 10% don't make it.
Really?
10% don't make it. It changes it radically when people go through this process of saying, okay, I gotta get my business to a place where it's financially viable. And there are ways to do it. Like Bob's thing about intention, right? You set the intention. I'm gonna get this thing so it's financially viable, because until then, I'm running a business that is losing money. I can't figure out, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up because I don't know how to make payroll tomorrow. No, that is a hell of a way to live a life, right? So this isn't just about some theoretical thing for entrepreneurs. It is awful to run a company in that situation, right? Do you want to ask something?
So you, Food Finance Institute, basically helps make 9 out of 10 businesses at least successful. Mm-hmm. How do you get paid? Is it on a percentage basis? Is it on an hourly consulting basis or retainer? How does it work?
I founded this thing within Extension in Wisconsin. So essentially, in Wisconsin, it's free, which is kind of crazy, right? And now I have federal grant money to train consultants around the country to work with people to do what I do, because I can't be everywhere, right? So now a lot of them would be in Extension, or they might be in a nonprofit, or there's a range of things. There are also people who charge. There are for-fee consultants around the country that do the kind of work I've been working with them, teaching them to do. And basically that work is two things. It's fix the business model so it can be profitable, and then fund it sufficiently so it can grow. And fund it appropriately, right? So you don't need to, if you don't want to be a big national brand, please don't bring in investor money, because it's a mistake, right? But if you're gonna be a national brand, you gotta make sure you got enough capital. Yeah. Yeah.
My understanding would be that you really raised all that capital after you had the Whole Foods deal?
No, actually not. I raised it before because I had to build that plant. We couldn't have so the crazy, chicken and egg thing is Whole Foods won't give you a deal until you have a product, right? So they're not helpful that way. So yeah, no. Yeah. Who did I talk to? What sources? Yeah. So the trick about raising money is that there's a lot of different sources of money, but money isn't money, right? It's not all the same. And different kinds of money are good for different uses of money. So in the world of finance, you talk about sources and uses of capital. So I used debt to finance equipment and building, because that's what debt is for. You have a lot of collateral, you can fund that way. You can use loans, like working capital lines of credit, to finance things like inventory and receivables. That's an appropriate use of that capital. You do not want to use a credit card for any of those things, right? You also honestly don't want to use equity, which people find crazy. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And my answer to that is that because you can get a bank to do that. The hardest thing is equity, right? So equity, and you always need some, because banks don't finance 100%, nor should you take 100%, right? But so there's this trick to doing this. And then I had power company money, which was in there for buying equipment that saved energy. And so there's a big exercise about money. And honestly, a lot of what I train consultants on and work with clients on is this topic. After they got a business model that's fundable. Yeah. You're welcome. So for smaller people, Kiva and Kiva Zip is a source of money. Crowdfunding, like Kickstarter, is a source of money. My experience is that's like 10,000-ish with a really good campaign. And the thing about a food company is it probably needs way more than that, right? So you kind of have to do a lot of different sources to get to where you need to be. But the good news is it's all doable. It is.
Just
Yeah.
a comment about this question about equity is just an observation that success is built on the foundation of equity, and the equity typically is what I would call patient, mission-aligned equity that believes in you. Mm-hmm. Trying to match equity that is just in it for the buck is not a foundation you're going to ever succeed on. So you really have to choose your equity partners carefully.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you're just in it for the buck, those equity investors are probably not investing in food and agriculture. Right, because they want this sort of hockey stick return stuff that is just never, even under the best of circumstances, it won't happen with food and agriculture, or it won't happen fast enough. Yeah. But there are people who will do it, clearly. So. I know, because I tell people, where did we get this idea that you invest in something, it's going to get hockey stick returns. Like that is, if you think about it, it's a construct of tech, right? Before we had tech, nobody expected that. So why do we imply that that's true everywhere? I think, our country was built on 5% net income at the end of the year, every year kind of stuff. Yeah. Which is food, by the way. An egg. On a good day. Yeah.
Let's now talk about the boot camp. And
Sure.
I'm going to ask Josh to come up with us here. So my mind is spinning. It was spinning before the meeting. Now it's really spinning. It never. Okay. I admit it.
Does it ever stop spinning? Yeah.
Yeah. The hard drive runs almost continuously. There's lots and lots of opportunities. There's educational opportunities. They're productizing some of the stuff that Tera and I talked about that can go from this building with a Zoom room full capability to the world. There's just all kinds of phenomenal things that we can do. But what really appeals to me is building more manufacturing businesses, small manufacturing businesses. Tera's Way is 20 people, now it's 40 people. It isn't a big conglomerate. It's 40 people in a plant. That's the kind of business that creates a lot of power and a lot of value for a community, because that money stays here, right? So when I found out, when Barbara and I went up to be part, at least for one day, of the Food Hub boot camp, it became very clear that if I did have a food-based business, this is exactly where I would want to be. I would want to be there before I even launched my food-based business, so I would understand more about how and why I can be successful. So we're going to be doing a boot camp for food entrepreneurs. We're going to try to fill it up with people in Jefferson County. And then when we come to the end, if we don't have our 10 participants, we're going to make concentric circles, and we're going to make the circles bigger and bigger until we get our 10. Now that's starting at April. April. I think April 7 and 8, or it's 7 and 8, 9 and 10, and I believe. So April, I think 7 and 8, and May 9 and 10. So what I'd like to do is just have Tera explain a little bit more about what the boot camp is all about, and particularly who should be coming to the boot camp. Mm-hmm. Then I want to hear from Josh about what FIDA's vision is for this kind of food manufacturing. And I'm including, the production of food. If we're going to manufacture stuff, we need to produce it also. Cider Works has 800 apple trees. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Because then they're vertically integrated. So anyway, a little bit more about the boot camp, and then FIDA.
Okay, so what I do in boot camp, I developed boot camp because I wanted to say that the consulting work I do with people typically takes months, right? So I'll start engaging with somebody, and they're losing money, and we have to fix some things about their business model, and then we have to go and go through the money raising thing and getting ready to raise money. And it takes a long time because these are the entrepreneurs who are working, more than 8-hour days already, right? They're really busy, and they're traveling and all kinds of things, or not, but they're very busy people. And so what happens is it takes a long time. So I developed boot camp as a way to kind of accelerate it. It's also a really good way to get a peer group together so that the peer group can stay with each other after I'm gone, right? To provide support, which is important. There's nothing quite as lonely as running a company, honestly. So what I do is I come for 2 days. We train in the morning, and we do one-on-one consulting in the afternoon with me. I train, the first 2 days is on business models that can make money in food. So that's this issue of, am I going to be a wholesale brand? And if I am, like how big I need to be and want to be, and because not everybody wants to, be big, and that's fine. And then, and I've done a lot of work with clients, and I've got a lot of metrics and things, so I know when I do this, I'm speaking from real experience. And then that leads to people go away and they have to go fix some stuff and do some rethinking about their business and work on stuff. Then we come back together and then we focus on money. So that part is like getting the business ready and documented so that they can raise the money they need to grow. So the thing about, if you're just on a simple level to think about, if you make 5% net income in a food business, which is time to open a bottle of champagne, honestly, because that's profitability typical for food, right? That means that you have about 5%, you can fund out of free cash flow growth of 5%. If you think, and small food brands have to grow faster than that. They are growing faster than that. I mean, in a percent basis, you had 5,000 sales this year, next year you have 10. That's 100% growth, right? Because of that, this money thing is really important for food companies. So, and it's an ongoing issue for food companies. So that's why I do what I do, right? So we do the pre-work. We look at getting the business models that are going to work. We look at, some people have to invest in developing their brand. Some people have accounting systems that aren't working. They have, the specific situations are really different. So they get one-on-one consulting with me too. And then they go away and then they come back. We do the money part. And so by the end, people probably still have work to do, but you're ready. Like, you know what you're doing, you know how much money you're going to need, you know the best places to go look for it, and you're on the way to getting your documentation together so you can be successful doing it. So it's very powerful. The group that I did, the Hub group, is they're a couple months out of it. They want me to come back. I mean, it's an ongoing thing that now you have a work group of people who are a peer group who want to support each other, and then they want the technical assistants to come in and, reflect on what they're doing essentially.
Is the boot camp appropriate for someone who's just still on the whiteboard? They just sort of haven't done it yet. They're just still thinking about developing their
Yeah, the question is it appropriate for somebody on the whiteboard? And so the first part of it, that business model 2 days, would be wonderful if we had people there, because that will what that will help is people have all kinds of lovely ideas in food about, grandma's salsa recipe or whatever, and then you have to make that a reality in a business. And this would sort of redirect all of that at the beginning, right? So all that business model work would be really helpful. The second half, they're not ready because they don't have financials yet. They're just not ready for that yet. So, but that's okay. I mean, typically that it would not be unusual that a different, a subset would do the second part, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So just one final word. So Josh has been a really great partner in this. I think we're incredibly lucky to have such a dynamic, young, powerful, visionary guy head of FIDA. So I'd like you to come up, Josh, and just give your perspective of why FIDA is actually sponsoring this, and what do you see in this?
How many people know Bob Ferguson? So Bob came to me a couple months ago and said, "Josh, I have an idea." It's probably what the idea. I said, "Okay, Bob."
No. Okay, Bob.
Okay, it's probably what it was. And that's probably my initial thought. But Bob really worked me on this one, and I'm really excited to be here. And like Mayor Malloy was talking about, Fairfield has really had some really strong sectors, and we've kind of in some cyclical cycles, the communication sector, the technology sector, the financial sector. And for a couple of years, I've been keeping an eye on what is the next opportunity in Fairfield. the manufacturing sector in Fairfield is incredibly strong. There's job opportunities, and companies can't keep up with growth. But the one sector that I think is untapped or has incredible potential is the food manufacturing sector. And so that's why I'm interested in supporting this project with Fairfield Economic Development. And with the entrepreneurial culture, we have the right ingredients, we have the right soil, and we have the right nutrients to support that soil and the growth of the companies here. So I'm really excited to be able to partner with SLC, and hopefully we have a full class, and I have no doubt that we will. And Tera touched on economic development, and that's what we do. So we want to incubate every opportunity that is ready to grow. So.
Could I just, you just sort of set me up for this, but in our little tree that we're growing, starting at home first, the second root motive behind this organization is partnering with supportive organizations. So thank you, Tara, and thank you, Josh.
Oh, you're welcome. And I just want to make sure that you understand that when I work with people in boot camp, I'm not trying to make them all big. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who came to me thinking she wanted to be big. Her name is Leanne Cordiscu. I can't pronounce her name real well. And she was making toffee. She had a full-time job somewhere else, actually GE Medical System. So it's great business training actually to work at GE, even though it's a grind, you know. So she's making toffee. She comes to me because her toffee got in the Emmy bags, and she's like, oh my God, they're in the Emmy bags. I'm a national brand. And I'm like, okay, honey, all right, you can do this, but you know what? Your life is going to be on airplanes every other week, and you're going to need to raise $1 million, and you probably need investor money, and blah, blah. And I said, do you want that? Is that what you want? And she said, oh my God, no. Like, I had no idea that's what you were talking about, right? And then I said, okay, well, so we got to get you a consumer-facing business model here then, because you need something that is local, right, if you don't want to do that. And she said, you know, I always wanted to have a patisserie. I spend all kinds of time in Europe, you know, and I make these great candy and chocolate and stuff, and I'm going to do a patisserie. And I said, cool, well, go think about it. She came back with the name Chocolatarian. She had a partner. I helped her raise money. So she has a viewing kitchen in there. So she makes wholesale candy, but it's also like a coffee shop thing. And it turns out that people in Madison don't want to go to a patisserie at 7 o'clock in the morning. What they want to do is be there at 8 o'clock at night, eating chocolate after dinner and drinking wine. So that's what her business does now. And I just helped her buy an old bakery on the other side of town. So now she has a wholesale and catering business, and she owns that building, and she has another location. And she's thinking about starting a national franchise.
True economic development.
Serious. She employs 48 people now.
Bravo to you.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff that's possible, right? And so this isn't about my imposing my vision on them. It's in helping them understand what their vision really is that's realistic for what they want to do, and then lining up the money and getting them the resources, and look what can happen. It's
Tara,
really
you
cool.
come in like military gear. I'm like, you know. Yeah. I'm
getting the vibe, yeah. No, it's not military gear so much, but I call it boot camp for a reason, you know. Some of this is really hard for people because you kind of start your thing and it's your baby and it was your dream and this is what it looked like but it hasn't been working people if they're that stage, right? Mm-hmm. And the young people who are still dreamy, they're really dreamy, right? And then it's like, oh, the wet, it's like the wet blanket. I just went, except that I never do that. I do, and then I say, no, but we're going to get you something that is going to work. Like, that's not a good idea, but this might be, and let's think about this. And I had people crying with the food hubs. I did. And I don't like, and I'm not saying that because I feel good about that, but it is not easy. But they all left there feeling really energized, and they had clarity. It was like, wow, now I know what I'm trying to accomplish. Before I was just kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall.
So we're going to get along.
You're going to get.
We're going to along.
We're going to get along.
I think you clear the. I think what I'm getting is you really get down to the meat and potatoes.
Oh, seriously.
And you clear the illusions and
seriously get to the point and get them working on the right stuff. And the other thing that comes out of this will be practical stuff for you guys about economic development. So there's an example. With the food hubs in Iowa, there was one in there in particular who really needed brand work. Like, this is a company that had been in existence for 20 years. The sales are sort of declining. I look at the product is amazing. It's these beautiful greens. And you look at the package and the label looked like a bad meat label. You know, like those white labels with the bad print on them, you know, that was the label. And you're like, okay, so that might have worked 20 years ago. It doesn't work now. So now we need a marketing firm who actually understands how to do this for food, right? So that's a project. And then another one is you need accountants who know ag accounting if you're doing ag. Not easy to find, right? So we'll surface infrastructure that you guys can then focus on developing that will help the whole sector.
Well, thank you for coming to Fairfield. And
yeah.
How about Tera?
Yeah.
Whoa. So I want you all to imagine the baseboard is down, and we have had a lime washing party, and everything is beautifully lime washed, and we're going to have a very beautiful projector here, right here, and then a lovely screen here, and then a couple of remote cameras so we can do what's called a Zoom room. It emulates a teleconference room that would cost anywhere from $90,000 to $500,000 to set up with everything, and we're going to have it right here. And so this is going to be a place where we can do so much of this education. We can bring people in for a week of intensive work, and then, distance learning for the balance of it. We can do programs with MUM. We can do programs with lots of people. So we can package and provide knowledge like ag accounting. Tera said, very few people, even big national institutions that do this kind of work, don't necessarily do ag accounting. We're going to find out where the holes are and where the opportunities are, both in manufacturing and in production and in supporting producers and supporting manufacturers. So, boy, that's a lot of words tonight, but thank you all for coming. This was terrific. And a shout out to Werner and his team for all of the beautiful video